As we're just about to get started, welcome to Through My Eyes. My name is Rob Liebrick. I serve as CEO and president of Goodwin Living. We're very honored to be co-hosting this event with the Concerned Citizens Network of Alexandria. So thank you. Thank you for that relationship and partnership. I see this group has a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of stress. There's a lot of things going on in the world right now. And I just would say, let's take a breath together. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. We'll do this twice to try to center ourselves for this important event. So 4 seconds in, 3, 2, 1. 6 seconds out. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. Do it one more time. Sheila's going to lead us in yoga right after this. And out. Our event today is connected to the month of January, where we celebrate and remember the life of one of the most remarkable individuals, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In the spirit of remembering, though, we'd like to start actually with a moment of silence and quiet to direct our love to those who experienced loss in the tragedy last night in Alexandria, in terms of the airplane and the helicopter. Thank you. Amidst all that's going on in the world, we are very grateful to extend a warm welcome to the various officials and dignitaries taking time to join us. Kate Garvey, Director of the City of Alexandria Department of Community and Human Services, Bill Campbell, former Alexandria City Public Schools Board Member, Donna James, CCNA Board Member, Sharon Wilkinson, former U.S. Ambassador. Certainly our members of our first responders. I know we have the Sheriff's Office here. Thank you so much for taking time. Along with members of our public health policy organizations. And I'd also like to take this moment to acknowledge we are live streaming this. So if you don't want your phone conversation to be on live stream, we suggest you turn off your phone or silence your phone right now. Could get interesting. I also want to just take a moment to say thank you, a particular thank you and appreciation to Lindsay Hutter from our organization who really helped spearhead this. And when both myself and Colonel Page are looking for guidance from you, Lindsay, you know that you have a key role in all this, so thank you so much. And Kim Butler, our entire dining team, life enrichment team, maintenance team for setting up things. And you might have noticed we changed our age limit today. We have a few students from Alexandria City Public Schools. No, we always welcome all ages here, just so you know. To live here, you got to be a little bit older, 55 and better. History is important to unpack and to understand and preserve, and all of us are honored to be able to entrust you for the firsthand experiences you're about to hear from the panelists. And we hope that you take the responsibility to share the stories. Yes, this is, I think, a better day in school, right? Being here versus being in classroom. But this is a living classroom, and we're expecting you to come forward with some great questions during the Q&A session. Are you ready for that? All right, pretty good. This group's strong. We got to work on it. All right, but we're getting there. This event captures our deep commitment to the role of older adults in sharing history, and especially with future generations. There's a lot of history across the 2,500 older adults that Goodwin Living serves every day through our senior living campuses and our healthcare services, which reach out to older adults across the region. And we love being able to have those stories shared, honored, and uplifted. On behalf of Goodwin Living, we wish to express our gratitude for this collaboration with Colonel Jim Page and CCNA, and the opportunity to get to know CCNA and its rich mission. There's nothing so powerful as people and organizations coming together to create a multiplier effect. Serving together, we're able to touch more lives. So thank you, Colonel Page. We're really
more than welcome, sir.
And let's give him a major round of applause. It's my honor to introduce Colonel Page. with a little bit of background. We have books available. They're about 700 pages. All the things that Colonel Page, we had to boil it down to just a couple of paragraphs. So hopefully it captures this wonderful gentleman.
What are you charging for the book?
Yeah. No shipping today.
Yeah.
Colonel Page is a retired Army colonel and an accomplished leader with a distinguished career spanning nearly 3 decades in international affairs, strategic communication, and senior level operations. His unwavering commitment to social justice, which is part of why we're here today, and equity has earned him recognition as a highly respected advocate for underserved communities. Currently, Colonel Page serves as the executive director of the Concerned Citizens Network of Alexandria, where he addresses disparities in education, health, and social justice. Through CCNA, he collaborates with local officials, faith-based organizations, community stakeholders to implement initiatives that drive meaningful change. Colonel Page exemplary service has been recognized with numerous accolades, including designation as a living legend by the City of Alexandria, receiving the NAACP Community Service Award, the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award, the Foundation for Advancement of Music and Education Community Partner of the Year Award, and many others. In March, he will also, I don't know if you know this, you have another award coming to you. I hope I'm not spelling, anyway. In March, he will also receive the Senior Citizens Service Award from the Senior Services of Alexandria. Please join me in welcoming Colonel Page.
Wow. I did not know about that one. And also the credit card from you award comes up. I'm kind of lost on the program. First of all, let me thank all of you for spending some time with us this evening. The program has gone askew. We thought the mayor was coming. She called and said that she's got some pressing business, plane crash and that kind of stuff. But let me take a tender moment and go off script. This time yesterday, we were all smiling and laughing and having a good time, looking forward to being here with Lindsay and the gang and having a good time. And the plane went down last night. Everything shifts. But what has not shifted is our passion for this community, our wanting to be with you today and enjoy each other. So when I look to the left side of the room and I see my friends, I see high school kids, I see Eugene, I see Vancine. Look to the right side, I see Marilyn. I see my good friends Rose and Alan. We're at home together. So in this tender moment here is where we celebrate each other. So for this next 45 minutes, let's embrace each other and block out the world. Can we get an amen on that? Amen. So what I want to talk about today is why we are here, and that's to be part of each other. So when I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to you about what the bad things are in our life. I'm talking about the good things in our lives. We have some young kids, and I say kids in a very positive sense, from Alexandria City High School, who want to spend time with Judy and all of the senior citizens here in Goodwin House. So my charge to you, the young folk here, don't leave here without grabbing their hands and saying, let's learn together. There's a park down near Alexandria High School, it's called Fort Ward Park. This spring, meet us there. Bring a bucket of chicken. Sit down and talk to them. So that's kind of my charge. I lost my program, so I'm just kind of stalling until I can get my program. So watch me do this. I'll walk around the room and pretend, watch it. Is this the right program? There you go. So as I read the program, it says, Colonel Page, you should be talking about something else right now. Let me tell you a little something about myself, and then I'll get into the program. This city is important to me as a young leader. And I look in the audience and I see people who are here because we are friends. I see my friend Alan Lomax. I see Rose Bird and her husband. I see Marilyn Reynolds, a longtime friend. I see a 30-year buddy and Tommy Osborne. I see my lifelong friend Janet Barnett. So when you walk this room, you see connections as to why we're here. But the big connection is Lindsay Hunter. Lindsay and I got together and we said, we're going to do some stuff together because there are folk in the Goodwin house who need to know the young folk from Alexandria City High School. So this whole thing is about bringing us together so we can learn together, so they can know who Martin Luther King is and what his connection is to Abraham Lincoln. So when you look in your package, that lineage is there. So if I said to you, what was your #1 song in 1963, what would you say? May, Faye, what would you say? 1963, what was your song? You don't think about it. But they wouldn't even know. Who can remember the #1 song in 1963? Sugar, Sugar. 63. It was Sugar, Sugar, back in the day.
I was in New Jersey.
You was in New Jersey.
Having my family. In North Carolina, there was a mix-up going. Dogs are coming after people. Water hoses were coming after people.
Those are your memories. Those are your memories, but there's not this young girl's memories. So I want you to share those memories. In 1968, where were you?
In elementary school.
In elementary school. Where were you, Andrea?
Kindergarten.
In kindergarten. 1968, Alan Lomax, where were you?
High school.
High school. Tommy Osborne, where were you in 1968?
I was in Tech 68 in Vietnam.
In Vietnam, getting ready for the My Lai crisis.
Actually, I was passing through the attack of the North Vietnamese, which attempted to kick us out of the country. They didn't succeed.
So what happens in our collective histories, Tommy and I are both retired colonels. 1968 was a bad year for us. Martin Luther King got killed April 4th. Life changed. I'm an athlete. Tommy Smith raised his fist, Mexico City. Vietnam, My Lai crisis, Tet Offensive. The world changed in our lifetime. So when you come together, you celebrate who you are. So today we have collective memories. But what we have for you today is a positive memory of 3 great people. These 3 people sitting in front of you have their own memories from 1963 to 1968. And they're going to share those memories with you in their own fashion. The young guy at the end, the young kid at the end, his name is Mark Raleigh. He was with Dr. King standing in the breach behind him when he gave his speech. The young kid sitting next to him is Fanny Allen, who attended the march 5 years later. And the young spring chicken here sitting next to him is Gwenday Fuller, whose father, Mr. Ferdinand Day, grabbed her hand and said, "Come with me, let's go down to the march." Those are the stories you're going to hear. So the takeaway for all of us is listen to their stories. Appreciate their stories and go, wow. So at the end of the day, it's not about Colonel Page. It's about their stories. So I want you to listen to them. How am I doing? Pretty good? You guys good? We're all good? So I want you to listen to their stories in passion and think about the opportunity to listen to Mark, appreciate who they are. So this is a 5-year journey for them. And then you're going to hear some music from Eugene and Vancine. You guys ready to rock? So we're going to listen to the music first, and then we're going to come back to our guest panelists, and by that time I'll figure out what I'm going to do next. Okay? So music, maestro. As they come, this is our folks from St. Joseph Catholic Church. That's why I go to church. Every month I go to church.
We've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He's never failed me yet. Oh, can't turn around. We've come this far by faith. Don't be steadfast when troubles in your life. He'll bear your burdens and move all misery and strife. Just the other day, I heard someone say he didn't believe in God's word, but I can truly say that God has made a way, and He's never failed me yet. We've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He's never failed me yet. And I say, oh, can't turn around. We've come this far by faith. He wanted everybody to have the same freedom. He wanted everybody to have the same freedom. He wanted everybody to have the same freedom. He had a dream. Dr. King, Dr. King, Dr. King was a civil rights leader. Dr. King, Dr. King, he had a dream. He wanted everybody to join hands together. He wanted everybody to join hands together. He wanted everybody to join hands together. He had a dream. Dr. King, Dr. King, Dr. King was a civil rights leader. Dr. King, Dr. King, he had a dream. Let's all love each other and live like friends. Let's all love each other and live like friends. Let's all love each other and live like friends. He had a dream. Dr. King, Dr. King, Dr. King was a civil rights leader. Dr. King, Dr. King, he had a dream. He had a dream. He had a dream.
This community, one thing that we do well is support each other. Vancine has been sick. Eugene has been on the road, and they said we will come to support our community. So guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate who you are. If we don't acknowledge your being here, it's because I didn't see you come in. So as we work through the day, please let me know. If you got here late and embarrassed to be introduced, raise your hand. Anybody get here late? Like Danita, did you get here late? Raise your hand. Did Kate Garvey ever make in? She's here, raise your hand. So if you're late and embarrassed, it's okay. We're gonna move into the program now. Remember, the deal is, I want the students to connect with the residents. So don't be sneaking out of here without connecting with Judy. Judy, where are you? Judy, is she here? Raise your hand, Judy. Now, Judy and I connected. We played basketball together in high school, so don't let Judy run. Let me get into the program. The way we're going to do this is I'm going to introduce our panelists. I'm going to ask them a couple questions, and then we're going to get into the program. We're going to start with the young people first. So, Mark, you go first. Mark, give us a quick introduction of who you are, then I'll circle back. We'll go with you. Introduce yourself first, Mark, please.
I'm Mark Robbie. I'm a resident here, a proud resident of Goodwin House, Alexandria. Been here 6 years and had a career in Washington, D.C. My participation here today is because I came here in 1958 as a entering FBI training school, and then became an FBI agent in the Washington area for about 8 years, and then went on to other things. But it's my connection back to that time period that has led me to this moment.
I'll come back to you in a minute, Mark. As proved, we've met for dinner a couple of times before, so these are kind of repetitive questions, but we got some deeper dive to go into Mark's background. Fanny, please.
Good afternoon to everyone. Fanny Allen. I'm a native Georgian, but I live here in Alexandria, Virginia now. Worked with the Department of Defense, State Department, former Army, now again city resident, working with Colonel Page and other community leaders. Delighted to be here, and thank you very much for being here.
Ms. Day.
I am Gwen Day Fuller. I was born at Freedman's Hospital and right away brought back to Alexandria. That happened to a lot of African American people in the city. I have lived in the Boston area for years, and I taught school there for many, many years, 30 to be exact, and then moved back home when my parents became ill. I am so excited about being here today and about contributing to anything I can in Alexandria that will be supportive, and particularly to young people. You are our futures, and I'm speaking directly to Mr. Stewart's class, who came here on a bus today. We want to thank you for doing that. We want to thank Idle Brent for bringing them and supporting them to get here.
You will see some other folk here who is connected to both Mrs. Allen and to Mrs. Fuller. They're called grandmas, and I'll introduce them as we go along. Let me circle back. Gwen, I'm going to start with you, about you and your dad going downtown. Talk to me about that.
There was no question in our minds that we would be on whatever bus, train, or car that would take us down to the mall for the March on Washington. My father went with a group of men. My mother, my aunt went with me. It was a hot, hot day. It was my second year of college at Hampton University, and I had come home, and we all were just so excited about going. We had heard so many things that were negative about the march, that we should be careful and this and that. And when we got there, it was almost eerie. It was so quiet and peaceful and loving. And the kindness that we felt among the people was amazing. If only we could go back to that. It was a day that is etched in my heart. I'll never forget it. And his speech was just phenomenal. It was a hot, hot day, and yet I think I read this morning that there were 250,000 people there. And you could hear a little singing, you could see movie stars and political people and everyday people. And it was just a wonderful experience.
Let me stop here for a minute. I'm making an assumption that I'm wrong. As I look, most of us remember Dr. King's march, the speech. If you remember in context the speech, raise your hand. If you know what we're talking about. If you don't, it's okay. Any of the students not familiar with the March on Washington, raise your hand if you're not familiar with it. Okay, we're good. We're good because we can sit in the church sometime and bow our heads and go, he ain't talking to me. So now we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about Dr. King, 1963, downtown D.C. We're good? Okay, back to you, Gwen. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, too, one thing I remember is that it was so hot that day. My God, we were just perspiring, but yet people were all around the reflective pond there and just waiting for quite a while for him to come on stage. And if you read, you'll find that we were all there because we were fighting for jobs and we were fighting to end racism and segregation. And fortunately, we have ended some segregation, but unfortunately, we're still fighting racism. And that's something that we must unify and come together to continue to do. As I said, there were people from all walks of life. For me, I was so excited to see Lena Horne and Harry Belafonte and all these people, and to see Randolph on the stage, and Bayard Rustin, who was there, who organized the march. And I would also encourage you to go back and not only read the I Have a Dream speech, but read all of the many speeches that he gave throughout his lifetime. And some of them were soft and gentle, and some of them were not. Some of them he was really telling us what we needed to do in our country. And we're still fighting those battles, but what a support he was to people of color and all people during that particular period.
The sheriff just came in. Yeah. Let me go off script for a minute. When you have sessions like this, it's important to put it in context. We have a good sheriff. He's pretty good. He did something like, we had this remembrance project that kind of connected civil rights with the city. And I remember sitting in the audience listening to the sheriff apologize for some of our sins in the past. And I later went down to Montgomery, Alabama, and saw our connection to the civil rights movement. So when you can do that as a retired Army guy, it puts you in a special space and a place. Sean, I never thought, thank you, but I do today. Thank you for who you are. Appreciate it. Let's move now. I'm gonna transition over to Mark, who was there standing behind Dr. King. And Mark, I'm gonna put you on the spot. How did you get chosen to be there where you were?
I'm not sure I can tell you why I was personally chosen. I think that the Black movement and the FBI has a history, and I think what I'd like to say is the FBI presence that day was very, very small, very limited. I know of one other person who was there, and we both were there with cameras and had press passes. The only way I can reconcile all of that is how the march evolved historically. We're talking about 1963, 2 months before the march. Martin Luther King was thrown in jail in Birmingham. And from there, he wrote his letters from Birmingham. Shortly after that, this is June 63, shortly after that, Medgar Evers was assassinated. And John Kennedy, the president, had his civil rights bill introduced. It was also the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was issued after the Battle of Antietam. And the Black movement, and I'm going to characterize it as 6 Black leaders at that point that had directed 6 different organizations, including Martin Luther King with the Southern Poverty Group. You also had James Farmer from CORE. You had Whitney Young from Urban League, Roy Wilkins from the NAACP, John Lewis from the Students Nonviolent Committee. They wanted to have this march and have it in that time frame of the Emancipation Proclamation to get full force of it. And they had to really get permission from the White House. They wanted a meeting with the White House. At this point, Bayard Rustin was not involved. And they had to suppress their egos and their agendas into one forceful, narrow focus, which they did. And they signed a document, and it was cause above all else. They were going to suppress that and go in, and the White House, John Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, who was the Attorney General, their concern was, this has got to be peaceful. How are we going to guarantee peace in this? And it went back and forth, and the president was concerned and was first against it, and then, according to John Lewis, suddenly changed and became in favor of it, and then it was going to be a march that the government was going to be a part of, it was not going to be a march against the government. And that's why it started at the Washington Monument and then went to the Lincoln Memorial. It didn't start up at the Capitol. Right. And so my presence in the context, and there was terrible stuff that happened afterward. This was like a moment of focused time with an objective, and it was driven by peace and harmony, singing, and people dressed up, and it was like a joyous occasion, but driven for a purpose, very serious.
Mark, let me stop you for a minute.
Pardon me?
When we talked before, you talked about being a white guy. Were you uncomfortable?
Not at all. I never felt, I don't know what percent were I didn't stand out as a white person because there were lots of whites, but certainly a vast majority of blacks. I never had a moment of uncomfortability or fear. In fact, I think I joined in the event.
You're from Minnesota, right?
I'm from Minnesota.
But you talked about your transformation and leaving the FBI.
Yes, that comes later.
Can you turn to page 3 and tell me why?
Well, I haven't talked much about this publicly, but I've done a lot of reading about this. And, well, it's no secret that J. Edgar Hoover was a racist. I didn't know that when I came. I guess, it was a different time. But it was pretty clear pretty early when you just looked at the number of agents who were black. I think there were 2 out of 6,000, and they were both chauffeurs, or they had double duty. After the march, the fact that Dr. King could, and it was his march, if it wasn't in advance, it certainly was after it concluded with his speech at the last end. And historically, it is Dr. King's March on Washington. There was, I would call it fear at certain levels of the Bureau that this man who could command such a group to behave in such a responsible way to achieve this higher objective was a person perhaps that should be feared.
Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot, and this this is not part of the script. One thing that we have done a poor job of, from my vantage point, is taking your life story and making it be a lesson for the whole city. I'm looking at Griff, who runs DPC. Griff, raise your hand. We have venues and organizations where we need to bring you in while you got a strong voice and talk about lessons to be learned. You know, just your voice, you're from Minnesota. We have troubles on the horizon that you can help us punch that. I'm gonna stop you for a minute, Mark, and come back to you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I told you I was gonna do it, so you okay? Let me jump 5 years ahead and talk about the dreaded day of 1968, April 4th. And Fanny, I'm coming to you. Talk to me about the funeral, how you felt.
We'll put it a little bit in context. I attended Morris Brown College in Atlanta, Georgia, a historically black college and university. We heard about the assassination. And I'm going to try not to get emotional. Sadness, shock, anger, fear. A man of peace. I didn't know a great deal about him at that time, but through a magazine that I'm sure the students don't know anything about, it's called Jet Magazine. That's how we learned about our leaders, our African-American leaders, because very little was in the press otherwise, unless it was negative. I watched his casket go down Hunter Street, driven by horses. As students, we stood still, or we sat on the wall and watched. I stood in line almost 4 hours to view his remains. It was after that I became very familiar with him. Mark mentioned the letter from the Birmingham jail. It was a document that really brought his works as a civil rights leader to me as an individual. And it was from that letter that I became probably a better student, because I then had my own agenda, because my father was not allowed to vote. So my work from that day forward, I could be more specific, but I think just from that letter, I became more determined as an individual to work for civil rights. No, I did not stand on a platform and speak, per se. Was not an eloquent writer and speaker like Dr. King, but in my own way, I continued to work for civil rights. Thank you.
I'm going to come to some of the students, because we talked at lunch about being involved. Who's the young lady who had on the red shirt? Where are you? Raise your hand. I'm going to be coming to you in a minute, so get ready to be ready, okay? What we talked about, don't give me that Daffy Duck look when I come to you. I want to come back to Mark, because you had a question for him. One of the things we really want to do is make sure that our time is well spent. And I'm coming back to you, Mark, because he told me something at the break. Mark used to be a baseball player. He thought he was. And he tell me about your first time with my cousin, Mark. Go ahead.
Spelled the same way, right?
Spelled the same way, yeah.
Well, I batted off a Satchel Paige, maybe the greatest pitcher of all time. And I had one at bat. 1950, I was 19, and he had taken a year off between. He was playing for the Cleveland guardians slash Indians slash guardians, and left for a year to barnstorm, and then came back and played for St. Louis. But Colonel Jim, they actually spell their name the same, right? So
Same plantation, yeah.
and I had won it bad, and I worked him to a full count before I swung and missed.
Yeah. I guess what I want to share with you is that all of our stories are connected and personal. When I first met Mark, he was enthralling. We just kept talking about it. And when he started talking about how bad he felt about the FBI, I talked to Griff about coming and talking to the NAACP and other organizations. I'm looking at Rose and other folk in the community. In my role in the community, I don't have any trouble bringing Mark with me to have a conversation at at the high school. I want to do that because, Mr. Stewart, this is the story that we need to hear in his own words through his own eyes. So when we walk this table, I can bring Mark with me. He can hear the pain from Fanny. When we had lunch together, Fanny started crying. She did good today. She didn't cry. Take a picture. She didn't cry today. But when you start talking about people being late, like Pastor Lou, who just walked in late, Lou, raise your hand. And then when you hear my friend Gwen, whose father I absolutely adore. I asked one of the kids to raise your hand. Who is Mrs. Day's father? Come on, one of the students. Who's her dad? Come on, guys, don't let me down. Go ahead, come on. Stand up. Right. Mrs. Day's dad is Ferdinand T. Day, whose school is right down the street. So when we started our organization, Mr. Day is the guy who said, Colonel Page, do something. So Gwen and I decided to do something, and this is what we do. So when we come to you, we want you to do something, not just sit here and shake your head and go, okay, it's good. So our do something is for you to grab one of these young kids and do something. Take them down the street, take them to Panera Bread, find Lindsay. So when we leave today, it's to do something part of the deal. So what I want you to do is make sure that we grab a student and do something. How am I doing so far? Am I doing okay? We good? Janet? We good? So what I want to do, Lindsay, you got something? Say again? Talk to me, Lindsay.
I think you're heading towards audience Q&A, is that right?
That's a Raj. That's right. We got some questions for this audience. Mark, they got a difficult one for you, so wake up. We're ready to go. We have a student question from the audience. Come to you and make sure that you put the mic first. Kim?
So when you were standing behind Martin Luther King Jr., how did you feel?
Mark, this for you.
I think, like I said, the day progressed beautifully, so I just stood back there and enjoyed the speeches. But I got to say that when Dr. King finished his speech, it was a feeling of, you knew you had witnessed history. You knew things were going to be different. It was going to be better. There was no way you could walk away from that experience without feeling change was going to come. And I think that speech has kind of typifies or kind of identifies that moment of change. There was not that, there were terrible things that happened for years after and still happen, but that I think that was a transformative moment.
Mrs. Butler has a question in the back. You need a microphone. Yeah. Yeah, you did.
So I think my question to you is, thinking about, do you see that change at that time? Do you see it ever happening here? And I always say to myself, we have these people who've had these moments, but who is going to be that next person, that next thing, that next movement? Because I feel like this is our civil rights movement right now for our younger adults. And so I just wonder, like, do you see that shift? And do you think we could ever get to that point where something so huge made such an impact? Because it was that speech made such an impact. And I don't know if we have that right now.
This is for you, Gwen? For you.
I just feel like every little bit that we do helps us move towards getting to that place. I think that we are at a very difficult time. For me, this is one of the most difficult periods of my life. And that's why I'm so hopeful that our young people will see what has happened in the past, what has brought us to our future, and that they will want to do things to help and support, with the help and the support of older people, to be able to do that. I refer to this that we're on now as a slippery slope. I don't know where I'm going from one morning to the next. Every day there's something new, but we can't focus on that. We have to get up and move and do something. And what we do might seem really small and little, but every little bit, I hope and pray, will help and get us to where we want to go.
Alan Lomax has a question here about mental health.
What do you think we need to do today, taking from the lessons of 1963 through 1968, in order to address mental health issues with Black and African Americans, particularly in the days right now where we're talking about getting rid of inclusion and equity? So what do we need to do? And let's just make it a little bit simpler. Just in the city of Alexandria, because we can't do the whole United States. But what can we do differently, or should be doing differently today?
I don't mean to jump in again.
Jump.
But I feel like we have to learn to live together as brothers and sisters. And the more we get together in groups like this and really express and talk about the things that are going on, I think that will be supportive. I think also in the Black community, we need to understand that mental illness is an illness and that we need not be ashamed of it, afraid of it. I think that everybody in this room probably has someone they can point to and say they needed help. And I think we need to always have supports in place so that people can get the help they need. And that in our families, in our homes, even with our children, I've had to do it with my grandchildren. I mean, we have to speak and let them know it's okay if you're having a problem.
We have a comment from Mrs. Danita Green just about being part of the community. Mrs. Green, please. You need the microphone.
Just to piggyback on what Gwen just said, in our Black community for years and years, especially when I was a child, you were told that what happened in the home stayed in the home and you didn't talk about it. Well, we've got to let these kids know it's okay to talk. She's absolutely right. We've got to talk. There's nothing wrong with seeing a psychologist, a psychiatrist, whatever help you need in order to try to be a whole citizen.
Good. There's also a risk when you have these sessions to only preach to the choir of folk you don't know. There's a young lady here who's from South Carolina, went to the University of South Carolina. Can you raise your hand? University of South Carolina, play basketball. That's you.
It's my grandson.
Oh, your grandson. Could you identify yourself and stand up, please? Please. Give her the microphone, please.
Okay, I'm Mary Jo Bennett.
Here you go.
I'm Mary Jo Bennett, and I live here at Goodwin House. We've been here almost 2 years.
Okay. Tell us what you think about today.
Well, I agree that this is a very, I guess, as the panelists said, a very slippery slope of a time. I don't think in my life I've ever experienced quite a time. I remember distinctly the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. It affected me terribly.
Why?
Well, I was a student nurse at Temple University Hospital and worked a lot. The community around us was Black. And many of my patients were black, and it just really affected me, and all his work has continued to affect me to this day.
When you go back to your room or to your to your apartment, can you imagine the conversations you would have now based on what you saw today? You know Mark.
I do know Mark.
You know Mark, and you guys have conversations over coffee, and you see the young people here. Is this a good deal for you today?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, would you like to have coffee with a couple of the students?
Sure.
I'll pay for the coffee, but you know.
Yeah, we were just talking with someone here earlier.
Okay, so what I want to do is make sure that we're connected. Young man, you had a comment? Who had the comment? Was it you? Yeah, come on. Thank you, man.
Hello, I just have a question.
For whom?
Everything that's going on in the world right now.
Who's the question for?
Everybody.
Okay. Everybody.
With everything that's going on in the world right now, like, what is your advice to us, to us young people?
Let Fanny take that one, Fanny.
Believe it or not, I came with just a few recommendations. Take seriously your education. Learn all you can while you can. Know your history. Not only the history of the country, but your family history, the history of the city of Alexandria. Know your leaders. Go to them. Talk to them. Read, read, read.
You got a comment? Comment for you.
I asked a question after Colonel Page left the students. We were in the Fillmore room. And when I asked them what I thought what their responsibility is as a student, one student spoke about goals. Yes, please, please have goals and objectives. And they're going to change throughout life, but have them now. Continue to pursue them. Vote. Vote. You heard me say just a moment ago, my dad was not allowed to vote. And he worked in the community as a farmer and as a factory worker. He could not get an education, but he told every young person that came in front of him, pursue your education. No, he said, get your education. And I'm not saying don't have fun. Please, have fun, but pursue those kinds of things that will make you a better person. And if you are a better person, someone else is going to be a better person.
Let me put a pin in the conversation real quick. This is the first of two conversations we're going to have with Goodwin Living. The second one is going to be down the road a piece at the Bailey's Crossroad. Let me introduce my colleague at that end. Mr. Wade, could you stand up, sir? Sir. Yes, sir. Wade, Pastor Wade? Yeah. Could you introduce yourself real quick, please?
My name is Frank Wade. I'm a retired Episcopal priest. I live here at Goodwin House.
Right. Frank will be the host at the next session. He'll do a better job at the next session. So that's who he'll be. Just 1 minute, please. The students have to be out of here by 2:45, so I'll need your collective help. We're going to move to the reception room and continue our conversations. But I want to close this session with some words that are important to me. And the one thing that's important is as I introduce my family to you. Howard, stand up. Introduce yourself.
Howard
I've known Howard since he's in college, and he's important to me. And the reason he's here is because when we have a chance to meet other kids, he comes down to do that. So that's important. So grab him when he's in the auditorium. I'm going to ask our panelists to take 30 seconds to say something prolific, and then we're going to move down. But before we do that, Sean always gets the last word before Kate Garvey gets to say something. Kate, say something.
I just want to say thank you for this opportunity to hear the wisdom and the power and the peacefulness of this panel. And also for me, it is such a critical thing for us to actually try to be hopeful in these times. And seeing all the students here, it makes me hopeful. I know there's so much capacity, especially here in the city of Alexandria, for us to do better, to really, be out front and do things differently. So I'm just so grateful to be here. And Colonel Page is 1 in a million. Don't ask me what million of what, but so thank you, Colonel.
That's the roast. That's the roast. Right? That's it right here. Sheriff, please, sir. Sheriff with a gun.
It's part of the job, right?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sheriff Sean Casey, Colonel Page, our esteemed panelists here. Thank you for this opportunity. It's so important that especially individuals like myself who are law enforcement professionals in this city be reminded and constantly engage in discussions with you all because of the wrongs that we perpetrated in the past and how a lot of the wrongs that occurred were at the hands of law enforcement. And so it's so important that we participate in the Remembrance Project and that Colonel Page has opened my eyes to so many different issues and things that have evolved since the Civil Rights Movement and that continue to this day, and that we as law enforcement professionals have to continue to engage with Colonel Page and the students and our panelists and all of you in the community to understand what it is that we're here to do and who we are here to serve. And so thank you for this opportunity. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Colonel Page.
Rob, back to you. Rob.
Strikes me that we have 100 blessings in this room, and I think if we all reach out and touch 10 lives and take messages and stories back, we can have 1,000. And if they take 10 and they keep on reaching out, we can make a world of difference. So thank you for being here to spark that.
Down to the reception area.